Hey, boys and girls, weather report for March 21st, 2022. And it is literally raining stupid out there. I can't believe some of the shit these creationists come up with. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it runs deep.
What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I mean,
just report it and unpack it and explain the reality.
Yeah, no, it's not asking too much to ask people to try to be a little creative and think a little bit before you shoot your fucking mouth off. It's just like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Not even creative, just accurately report what the science says and don't go off on these half-cocked theories.
Yeah.
Not even theories, half-cocked fantasies.
Yep. I don't know if I need a cat. What do you think, Thor? Thor thinks I need a cat. I don't think I need a cat. I don't know. Anyway, so I've been talking to Redefined Living. So has anyone had any experience with Redefined Living?
Yeah, he's the one who will make a statement and go, your response or something like that.
No, it's not. That's not him. That's somebody else.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then no, I guess not.
He's always on John and Praise's channel. And shooting him, doing him, but he's going on about this black swan fallacy, right? And like you remember we covered it last time we did a stream where
I've accused creationists of kind of committing the black swan fallacy when they'll go and we know of no other way, so blah 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 blah, and then I go, well, all it takes is one example and you'll be proved wrong. So right. You are really, it's something that makes your position weak, because all you'll ever need is one instance of the opposite, to prove you wrong.
Actually, it's kind of the opposite of that. So let's just think about that for a while, because if I have a hypothesis that there's nothing but white swans, it's because all we've ever seen is white swans, right?
Right.
So that's my hypothesis. It only takes one black swan to falsify that hypothesis. And that means that my hypothesis is falsifiable. And it stands. I mean, it does stand until you falsify it, right?
Okay.
So you got to be careful with that. But then, with black swans, now, why would you insist there are no black swans if you're living in 1800 and nobody's ever seen one? Well, we know that birds' feathers can be black. So it is possible that there's a species of swans out there with black feathers. There's no logical reason why birds' feathers couldn't be black, or swans' feathers, right? And the other thing is that we have not looked at that much of the earth in 1800, that there could be species of animals out there that we haven't discovered yet. So, but it would still be okay to believe that hypothesis until you actually see a black swan.
Right.
That applies to unicorns, because there's no reason why there couldn't be a deer with a big horn in its nose, right?
That's true. Even a rainbow colored one.
Yeah, but it's getting less and less reasonable to believe in that as we explore more and more of the earth.
Right.
Yeah.
So if somebody made something and they called it that.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be. Yeah. That's not what we're talking about. We're saying
we'd have to call cheating on that.
Yeah, call cheating on that, I think. But so anyway, so my response to his question about God is I don't believe that there's such a thing as mind without something physical, without the physical ability for the gears to change in order to think. Right? When you're thinking, It's obviously a process. Oh no, I'm really echoing. I'm echoing through you, Scott.
You're echoing what?
Through
You
you.
hear echoing?
Yeah, it was echoing, and I saw it move on your icon, and I'm not sure why. Anyway,
Oh,
okay.
I'm typing. I must be typing loud.
Oh, maybe it was typing. Anyway, so anyway, there's when you're thinking, you're doing something in time. Obviously, you don't get an instantaneous thought. I mean, some people might believe that, but think about it for a second. Just think about it for a second. You see what I said there? You have to think along. Basically, thinking is kind of like walking across a room. You're going to go from one thing to another, right? And I don't believe that's possible without the physical. Well, he said, oh, it's a black swan fallacy. And I said, well, show me one example. Okay, so he has a hypothesis that there is a God. And it's fine. You can have that hypothesis. And you should have other reasons to believe in that hypothesis, such as I have when I believe that feathers could be black, that there could be a species of swan with black feathers. There's no reason why not. Well, could there be a God? Okay, what is his prior probabilities for that? Basically, is what I'm asking. And he comes back, well, you don't understand black swan fallacy. Well, I think I fucking do, dude. It ain't that complicated. A first grader can pick it up. But
so isn't a hypothesis supposed to be something you could test too?
Yeah, it's something you can falsify.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like in 1800, you couldn't necessarily falsify the black swan hypothesis, but in principle, you could if you found a black swan, right? So, I mean, that would be a perfectly viable hypothesis. Now, if somebody believed that there were black swans without any evidence, I would say they were taking it too far. If you believe there could be black swans, but I don't believe there are gods, and I don't believe there could be gods because I have other reasons for not believing in a god. God would have
to know the definition.
Well, the definition, I don't know why they don't say this out loud more often, but the definition of a god is something that is not physical, that's outside of space and time, that can do things inside of space and time, that can build things and make things happen. So it can have some physical effect on things. And it also has plans and thinks about things and somehow has morality. So it's something that has a mind. So no matter how much they want to deny that shit, their God has a mind. But in order to have a mind, you have to have the physical. There's no way to have a mind without physical. Nor is there any way to have information without the physical. So
yeah, I've always said that that if God exists, he's just some kid in his basement creating the universe.
Yeah,
what a simulation!
Futurama, I think, talks about or shows about that kind of idea.
Yeah. What a simulation! Yeah. What a simulation created by a nerdy kid in his basement because he's all alone.
Exactly. Yeah, that'd be more believable, especially with the way he behaves.
Right?
Yeah. Anyway, so we threw the link out if anybody wants to come in. We don't have too much going on today.
I mean, is it Monday or Friday? Like, that's what you're gonna wonder, right?
I keep thinking it's Friday.
By the way, Minoba wanted to know why you didn't have Snatta.
Oh, I haven't had Snatta for quite a while.
He literally messaged me right now. What the fuck?
I was going to. But I've been taking it easy. I got a lot of shit going on, and I'm busy studying stuff, and I've got some projects going, and so I've been really busy. In fact, I've been way too busy to even be doing this. Should not be doing this. So, what was that article you sent me the other day?
Hold on, I forget.
Did you send me the RNA one? About 4 people sent me the same article about.
Well, yeah.
They found an RNA replicator, and I never had time to actually read the paper.
I don't think they found it. I think they actually made the article I found said that they actually made it themselves.
Okay, so well, that's okay. I mean, that's fair. But how many nucleotides did it have? It had quite a few. It had too
Yeah, I
many.
didn't read it yet. I just find these articles. I read some of them. Like I said, I I have a server. I created a Discord server just for these articles and videos I find.
God damn it, Scott!
What are you
Start.
doing?
To me, a more
Hey.
plausible God would be some being that no
Okay, I'm
one is
close.
even isn't remotely familiar with, let alone has direct contact with them. For example, the ghost of Christmas from a Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, we think at the same. We get to the same idea at exactly the same fucking time, Scott. That's why I like you. Anyway, okay. To me, okay, more plausible God. Yeah, I don't know what the hell would be plausible about any God. I just don't get it. And like, what? How does he put it? What does he say exactly? It's kind of mind numbing the way he puts it. And he says, perhaps no answers in atheism would be a more appropriate name for your channel, is what he's saying. It's like, and I challenge this coward to come in here and discuss this shit with me because I want to talk to him about it. It's like, if you want to come in, if you can make a decent logical argument for God. And his logical argument for God is apparently that I don't have any proof that there ain't one. Well, I don't have any proof that there aren't unicorns. I don't. But I don't believe in unicorns. God damn it. Do you?
I don't have any proof that there's no Bigfoot.
Well, I mean, hold on a sec. I do believe in unicorns because because you can actually imagine one exists. However, that unicorn is just a mishmash of concepts. It's a horse with a horn and wings. If you want to go with the Pegasus, if you want to go with if you want to go with the alicorn route.
Okay, he says, you are so silly. You already have me laughing. Everyone on Earth has presupposition. For example, you have presupposed that there is no God. I asked you for a rational explanation. You have failed to provide one. No, please answer. Is it your position that beliefs held without evidence are irrational? Okay. Now, you see what's going on there? I have not presupposed that there is no God. I rationally figured out that there couldn't be one.
That's because he's not talking to you. He's talking to an imaginary Christian. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, an imaginary atheist, and that atheist is presupposing there's no God.
Yeah, he just presupposed it, right, out of the blue, without any reasons. Well, I have not presupposed that there are no rhinoceros with purple sweaters or purple polka dots, and what else could we have? Fucking pixie dust coming out of their mouths. I have presupposed that there aren't any of those, right? That there is no rhinoceros with purple polka dots. But I never thought about it until just now, and I don't really need to think about God until he brings it up. So I don't have to fucking presuppose anything about your mythical being. Does that make sense? We don't have to presuppose anything about something that we have absolutely no belief in.
Well, I think there are things we do presuppose, but that's not one of them.
Well, yeah, I presuppose that there's space-time,
Yeah.
I kind of presupposing that I got a big fat cat laying on my mouse right now. Oh, shit. There is one. Damn it. It's real. I just pet it and it purred. So, I don't know. Now, Midnight, do you think information is physical?
I mean, yes, it's literally the fifth state of matter. Even though there are like, I think 7 that they found. I don't know, or maybe they mailed it. But yes, information is physical.
Why would you call it a state of matter? What would?
Damn it! I even saved the paper. They
gotta go.
What was that?
I told my cat he had to go. I threw my cat out.
Oh. So is that why? So is that why I heard a beep, or like a bell? Do do do. You know
No,
what I
I
mean? The
think
bell usually.
I think that's Top Dog. I don't know.
Oh,
Are you doing that,
no.
Top Dog?
Nope.
No, maybe it's that other guy. That's
Yes.
Scott here.
But okay, I guess information being physical makes sense because information is carried by electricity, right?
Yeah.
Information it is carried by electricity, which I always wonder how like what is it about electricity that's that's able that's able to carry the information in the first place.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
well,
Or photons. I guess a better way of putting it, information is carried by photons, which are part of part of electricity or the electromagnetic the part of electromagnetism. Fascinating,
well,
though.
Well, information is carried by sound too, if you think about it.
Well, right, but sound. Right, but sound.
Waves in the wind. Waves on air.
Oh wait, hold on. Would that also be no, photons are about
Vibration.
light. Right.
well, in order to transmit information, you have to you go from an encoder and it ends up in some medium, right? That you're going to transmit it with, like electricity. And the way that we transmit electricity in computers is by 0 and 5 volts, right? It's either 0 or it's 5 volts. And it changes. So we do a sequence of bits, 0 to 5 volts, but we turn it into something physical. Okay. How do you turn something into something physical without it being physical in the first place? So it has to come from somewhere physical in order to be encoded. And then it's deciphered on the other end, whoever receives it. And they turn it back into some other physical medium, right? Could be something happening in their brain or whatever. I think where humans get confused with information is that when I tell you jump, or I tell you snowball, and you imagine snowball in your head, it's hard to imagine that is physical. That what happened between us is entirely a physical exchange. It started out physical, it transmitted through sound waves or through, in this case, electricity, and it ended up in your brain, and it was physical in your brain. So it's really hard for humans to imagine that our thinking is actually.
It seems to me that atoms themselves let me try again. That atoms themselves, or storage units, or enough of them can be used for information, for information storage. Because take DNA, right? Like it's 6 billion nucleotides.
Yeah.
Right, each of those nucleotides is made up of I don't know all the elements, but you know what I mean. It's made up of all those atoms. It's interesting.
Hi, Jay. So,
Hey,
are you
Hello,
you-
Mr. J.
are you one of those tossers that think information isn't physical?
Huh?
Are you one of those jokers that think information isn't physical? Are you?
Ooh.
It's a yes or no question, Jay. What are you doing?
It'd be like saying, is writing physical? Writing is physical, but the concept of information is in itself a concept, but it normally comports to something that happens in physical reality. So,
Yeah, I mean, well,
Like it's emergent.
Do you have a problem with humans getting concepts about physical things that you would say? Okay,
no. I mean, that's everything that we do based on our survival is based on conceptualization. It's based on our senses determining what's up, how to best work with it to avoid it. I mean, that's the whole reason why we learn how to identify things, learn about their properties and stuff, is either to learn how to utilize them, determine whether or not we need to utilize them or not, or just completely avoid them. Right? It's like when we learn about poisons and shit.
Yeah.
Right, but that also raises the question, as to how we're able to do that if we're just physical beings. I mean, we are physical beings. That's what I think. But
Well,
the
the
mind
thing
body
is that,
problem is always still there.
well, not really. I mean, it is, but it's everything that basically comes. It's like trying to put. It's like what Christians try to do when they try to basically say that all that's physical is based upon a metaphysical primary, but all examples that we have of the metaphysical by virtue come from things that are physical, right? So even though mind is conceptual, it does seem to be more, this concept of mind comes from things that we understand in nature as being physical things that have brains. So that's why we have that concept of mind. Right? They would say, well, no, you can actually have the metaphysical concept of mind, and that metaphysical concept brings about physical things.
Yeah.
And that's
Well, I mean,
that's just ass backwards to what we normally observe.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I know. I know. I don't know if you talked about this with Sir before, but what Sir said. The mind doesn't exist. There's only the brain. Which, okay, yeah, that's true. You are you are your brain, but there's clearly, there's clearly something. There's clearly something there that that emerges out of your brain.
Well, I don't
The
think he's
mind is
discounting I don't think he's discounting. I think he's saying fundamentally it's brain.
Well, yeah.
To
But
be
fundamentally,
charitable, he might be meaning that all there is fundamentally is brain, but the way that we are able to use our brain, and then we develop this concept of mind by the way that our thought processes work to conceptualize things and this kind of stuff. That's what we call quote unquote mind, because
Yeah.
obviously there's more to the brain than just conceptualizations.
Well, yeah, and that like separating the two, mind, like mind and brain, it seems to have created this confusion, right? The confusion of dualism. Like as much of a genius as Descartes was, he's kind of the grandfather of this. Oh, you know what I mean. The mind and body, the mind and body are separate. You know what I mean? The mind can exist without without the body.
Yeah, the
Which
interesting thing is that in my youth, I run into Buddhism and Ellen Watts, and he made a very big thing that it is a Western habit to separate the mind and the body. That is primarily a Western cultural thing. And
it goes back to the Greeks actually, but yeah, go ahead.
in the East, they don't quite do it as seriously as we do in the West. The separation of me from my body, like I am something that exists apart from my body.
Your identity. Yeah, your identity is not contingent on your physicality. It's something deeper.
Right.
Something separate from that,
conscious.
as though your identity would be, because I mean, think about it, your identity still exists. Who you are, the way people remember you, still exists after you die, but whether or not that's necessarily the case that you are that identity is.
And another sorry to cut you off, Jay. And another interesting thing, right, is that even though you may change as a person, who you are in your core is still there. Like,
God, that sounds like some new age. That sounds like some new age goofy shit.
Yep.
Because if you get brain damage, to who you are to your core changes.
Hippy dippy.
Okay, well, fuck off. Never mind then.
That's saying. Who you are changes, right? People have had brain injuries, and who they are.
Right. Okay.
Their personality, the way they think about things, their reasoning, all that changes. Or they just can't even do it anymore. They're just on fucking machines, and they're all. It's a horrible fucking.
The Chris Nolan Batman with the Joker, that movie. This had like Two-Face. Remember how they ended? Like they had to forget that Two-Face was the bad guy, or I mean Harvey was the bad guy.
Well, they had to make it so that Harvey didn't look like he was, because they had to preserve what he was, because who he became would undo a lot of things.
Yeah.
But
then
hold on.
Anybody else, Batman would just beat the fuck out of him.
Okay. Some drunken bum named Immutable Destiny has stumbled into the side chat and said this. Anyway, I don't know what he means by that, but there it is. Okay. Now you guys can go ahead.
He said what? What did he write?
I'm not sure. Mind has nothing to do with the brain. Brain has
But-
anything to do with the mind. I don't know. That's poetic.
The mind of the collective
He's channeling
Of the
Stephanie Trenton.
functions.
Whatever. Anyway.
You're like, what? Maybe you're like, whatever. Yeah, get rid of brain. Let's see what kind of mind you might have after you have no brain. That's being a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's see if a mind can exist if I, stick this needle to your eye and do some scrambling around.
Yeah, the thing is,
But if you
Yeah,
strip away-
hi, I'm still here.
Frontal lobe gone. There we go. All right, mine still works.
oh shit, against that white background, then I thought you disappeared.
No,
Oh,
like
I should change my background to black, and that way I can spot you easier.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's what it's come to. Okay, that's what. Yep, that's what
Icarus has come up with I guess this is a counter to what Immutable said.
it's that bad. Okay. Well, the beer has nothing to do with the hops, but the hops have everything to do with the beer.
See,
What?
I love it. And I wish creationists would take a lesson from this. Analogies and illustrations need to be about stuff that you're familiar with.
Right.
And
You can create an ale without hops, just saying.
an ale, yeah.
You can make a beer without hops. It's done probably not the best.
Okay,
They
man,
did, but-
we just got a ruckus
My dad-
going on here, don't
My
we?
dad used hops. I can't remember. Yeah, he used hops. My dad used to make beer, right? And he put too much sugar in it, and it would explode down in the basement while we were watching TV. We'd hear this pop, and you go down there and be fucking glad. But that beer was sweet, and holy shit, I loved drinking that. Was
So
like-
did the house smell like beer all the time?
pretty much, well, beer or
Probably
wine.
smelled like
Or
malt, probably
soup.
smelled like a cross between molasses and hops.
My dad made chokecherry wine. He made dandelion wine. He made wine out of his socks, for Christ's sake. He was just a nut. He made moonshine. He made some awesome moonshine. Me and him made moonshine that was 180 proof. Maybe 100, between 160 and 180. We got it up to. That's pretty good.
That's
Did you
moonshine.
live like in a cabin in the hills down a long dirt road?
We lived down a long dirt road, but there were no hills, Scott.
Okay, so memory lane for you is just a big, long dirt road.
Big long dirt road, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On a 40 that was 3/4 cleared. So anyway. Yeah. My dad made moonshine in the chicken coop, and he had a 30-cup coffee pot that he put the coil in, the copper coil. And so my mom didn't know he was making moonshine. So he did it out in the fucking. She'd never go in the barn, right? My mom went in the barn once in her life, and she said nope, and she left. And so my dad hid all his clandestine operations in the chicken coop. So the chickens were out there with this fucking still in the middle of the chicken coop, cooking moon. That's pretty cool. And then I got involved, and I taught him how to make a fractional still, and that's when we got the 160 to 180 proof going. You can't get that on a first run unless you have a fractional still. So what happened? What the fuck? What am I thinking? I thought more people were here for some reason.
Hey, Speed, go to 4:20 p.m. Icarus in the actual side chat.
Yeah, I was reading more of Immutable. I think I know where Immutable's going with his comments.
It's a familiar sounding argument. Yeah, man, you
4:20
put in some hours this weekend, didn't you, Jay?
A few.
It was fun to listen to.
Oh,
I listened to those long ones until I just get a little distracted or something, and I go on to something else. And I think I listened to that whole one with Sergeant Slim Jim when they were talking about I guess he was on Wild Heart's channel, but it was down to him and Jill.
Yeah, that was Sunday.
That was a good one.
Otangelo? Otangelo's back? Are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
It's Peter.
Yeah, click on the link and let's watch it. It's a short, and it's on Pine Creek's channel. It's Otangelo explaining the Shroud of Turin on LA.
It's actually about 20 seconds. The clip,
Yeah,
video
it's very
clip itself is about 20 seconds of the 40 seconds that
Okay, I'm trying to find it. That helps me. Okay, where are we here?
I do have something funny coming up very soon, though. It involves Tone Loc.
Involves what?
It involves Tone Loc.
What is
Tone Loc.
that?
Tone Loc is he's a pre-supper. He's one of Darth Dawkins' lackeys.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I don't have my YouTube set up yet. It'll take me a minute. And I will have it. Otangelo explains the Shroud of Turin. Holy shit. What a treat. Treat. Share. Things working? Things work. How about that? Can I make it full screen?
Full screen.
Oh,
Should we play it?
Go right ahead.
Well, the odds that it's not Jesus is 1 to 89 million. Habermas, he says that multiplying these probabilities, he points out 8 different distinct things on the shroud which are described in the Gospels.
The odds that it isn't Jesus are what, 1 in 89 million? Is that what he said?
Yeah, one to the 89 or 10 to the or
1
something.
to the 89 million? Yeah.
is it always an argument for the from the odds with Otangelo? Yeah.
He looks like
He
he
thinks it
lost
sounds
weight.
impressive.
I think he lost weight. I don't know.
He kind of did. He needs to do some planks or something.
Yeah,
But
he's looking good. I gotta say, it's that good Christian living.
better than before.
Yep, Christian living's always good. Good.
That green skin's kind of concerning.
Well, yeah, there's that, but that's sort of a South American thing, I think.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
that Brazilian Amazon jungle diet.
That and the fact if you're held by someone for too long, you'll pee on them.
Yep. What else we got over there? The sparsity of 99%. Yeah, okay, I got to link this. But first of all, I got to do this. And once again, here we go.
Jumping through hoops. Jumping through hoops.
Jumping through hoops. Okay, so this is our debate evolution, and it's got some really good stuff on it, and I will link this. But a guy does a rather large block on the 99% genome being 99% alike between humans and chimpanzees, or 98 or whatever it is. And there's a guy that has this Daniel, he's a Muslim apologist, and he basically is talking about junk DNA, and he's talking about how we aren't really similar to chimps and all this stuff. And this guy spends a whole lot of work to debunk it. So it's pretty good. Very decent. See if there's some highlights. Basically, okay, when you have two genomes from two different species, and even if they're really close together, there's going to be these huge areas where they're basically duplicated sections. And these duplicates tend to multiply like crazy. And they have in particular in certain areas, like something called satellite DNA in chimpanzees and some primates. Not all primates, but some primates, they basically, your genome gets bigger and bigger because a little short section gets duplicated. And then when that crosses over, it can basically duplicate again and again and again, and you end up with multiple duplicates when it tries to repair itself. So the first thing that you're going to find between me and you, we're going to find some areas that are duplicated in my genome, but not in yours. So in order to, oh God, we scared Jay away with that genetic talk. I hate that. In order to compare our genomes, we have to do an alignment, right? I thought we scared you away with science talk. Anyway.
No, I accidentally exited.
Oh, okay. So anyway, in order to compare genomes, you got to compare the parts that matter. And the parts that matter turn out to be right around I'm guessing that if you total them all up, it'd be like 8 to 15% of the entire genome would actually matter. But still, in humans and chimpanzees, a lot of our duplicated areas match up too. So there's all these random stuff that doesn't matter that matches up with chimpanzees. And if you align it properly, and of course creationists never do, they want to do a 1-for-1, I mean, if you compare the letter or the word for, F-O-U-R, to you duplicate it, now you have 2 4s, but in one of them you take out the O, and now you compare letter for letter, you're going to say, oh, only one letter is the same, because the other 2 don't line up, right? So those are obviously different. Well, that isn't how you would do it. 3 letters are the same. You just have to put a little space where you took out that O, right? Does that make sense? Everyone? Panel?
Oh,
Yes, makes sense.
Were you fucking paying attention? You weren't paying attention, were you? None of you were. God damn it. Again. Fuck.
this doesn't count towards college credit, so it's like, fuck it.
God damn, I'm just fucking putting you all in the back room. Son of a bitch. As my mom used to say.
I don't get it. I don't get really that big into the whole science stuff too often.
Yeah. Well, when people, the thing is, like, I was watching, even when you're in one discipline and you go into a room with these creationists, like, who was it? Reason to Doubt went into Sal Cordova's room along with John B., and they kicked his ass every which way on carbon dating, right? And Sal had nowhere to go. Well, then he comes down and he starts delivering his ultimatum, his basically his absolutism about certain things in evolution, and they can't come back at him. So what I'm saying is that it's a good idea to learn some of this stuff, at least to the point where
I
understanding of it.
Yeah, I try not to get into the conversation even that far. I try to take it to exactly what it is that their hang up is about why they have a conflict between the theory of evolution and creationism, and what's going on. Why do you have this problem? And if they think it's because if they're under this kind of impression that evolution is the thing that's basically turning people away from Christ, I can tell. I've had this conversation before with creationists. That is not the case. I was able to reconcile the theory of evolution with my faith in Christianity a long, long time ago, long before I ever stopped being a Christian or became an atheist. So I really don't get it, because this isn't an origin event. This origin event that we're saying, if you want to call evolution an origin event, it's an origin of species. And in order to have an origin of species, you have to have life. And you can find lots and lots and lots of articles out there that talk about how the theory of evolution does not solve the hard problem of how life came into existence. There are some hypotheses out there, some loose theories. Other than that, there's nothing that's out there that really tells us how life came into existence. Now, the abiogenesis hypothesis, some people call it a theory, that gets pretty close, showing that like you can get amino acids from these non-living elements, get amino acids, and then from there you get proteins, which are a building block of life. Cool. But they associate abiogenesis with the theory of evolution, and then they just count both of them out. Some of them, not all of them.
Okay, the thing is that there are some kids that are coming out of these creationist homes and these with homeschooling, and they run into evolution, and evolution ends up turning them into atheists over time, because it's just one of the it's like the dam breaks when they stop believing this one thing, and then they start questioning all the other things. Now, we started doing that. My brother and I did. We were raised as creationists, homeschooled, and then even not only did our viewpoint change on it, our parents' viewpoint changed on it, because we saw churches really struggling with trying to basically some churches were coming up with kind of this narrative that, the theory of evolution is out there and it distracts people from the truth of creation, of God's real creation. And it's like, no, not really. Not if you actually understand the theory of evolution. And they didn't.
So it was just basically a red herring that they were throwing out there. So
Yeah, no,
this doesn't actually distract from anything. But
if they had been spent more time on other parts of Christianity, the spiritual nature of it, the connection with God, the morality, overall, and if they'd spent less time on this creation bullshit, then there would be more there would be more reason for the person to believe, even if they differed in opinion about evolution, right? So there's a way to build a really strong Christian faith, even if you're an atheist, actually, I think. But that's it'll take me a while to support that. But there are elements of Christianity that you can basically practice and that you can just accept without thinking about them at all. And you can build a faith in Christianity. And that is that would be a much more powerful thing. And it would not be erased when the kid went to college. It'd be, when you cut out these two things, there'd still be this hole over here, that held strong. And that's what they're fucking not doing. They're getting into this bullshit.
Yeah, I went into, it was like a conversation, a back and forth I had with Raw Matt a couple of years ago. And he threw this article. He goes, see, your scientists, kind of using that rhetoric, your scientists even say that evolution doesn't prove anything. And when I read the article, it was from an evolutionary biologist. And he goes, the theory of evolution nothing about the theory of evolution proves the origin of life. That still remains a hard problem. However, the theory of evolution does best describe changes in species and these things that are going on that we've been studying, and the things that we found out that were wrong, and the things that we've amended over the years, and blah, 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 blah. So Raw Matt was basically like throwing me this guy's article because the guy said that one thing about evolution not being able to solve the hard problem of the origin of life itself. That means we just throw out the theory of evolution altogether. I'm like, you are a fucking idiot, Matt.
When Raw Matt talks, reigning stupid is very appropriate. I mean, that guy, I don't know how he thinks. Some of the stuff he says and sounds so confident about. I guess if you don't know any of the science, you may not see it, but some of the shit he says is so fucking ridiculous. It's
like the time in that same comment, he goes, "Oh, come on." He goes, "Oh, come on. You know God exists. I know that you know God exists. You know God exists like my cat exists." And I'm like, you can demonstrate your God to exist like you can demonstrate your cat to exist? And he went completely fucking silent after that.
Yeah.
And the whole comment thread disappeared.
Yep. Oh, really? They wiped it out?
Oh, they wiped it out. Yep.
Yeah, I should capture this one. I'm having a go around with Redefined Living, and I'm trying to get him to actually talk to me one-on-one. He's doing this pre-sub bullshit with me.
Oh, man, that guy, oh my God, that guy's horrible to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I went and looked back through my emails, and I talked to somebody named Redefined Living about a year ago, and it turns out we're both alcoholics, and we had kind of a nice conversation. I'm trying to, I can't put that guy together with the guy I'm running into on Maddox's channel.
Redefined Living makes Tone look like a pleasure to talk to.
Yeah. He's something else. Well, he kept saying I was using the black swan fallacy. He asked me why I didn't believe in God, and I said, well, because I don't believe it's possible for there to be a mind without physicality, right? To have a physical organism, in order to have a mind, you have to have a physical organism very much like ours. Otherwise, you're not going to have a mind.
He's also missing the fact that the black swan fallacy is a fallacy in logic because it's relying on inductive reasoning. It's not deductive reasoning. Right. But there's nothing wrong. Human beings believe things all the time inductively. That's why it's called inductive reasoning. If you want to demonstrate something, the truth of something, that something being actual, making an argument like, oh, it is the case that there are no black swans because all I've ever seen is white swans, then no, that is logically fallacious when it comes to demonstrating the truth of whether or not there's only white swans or there are no black swans or whatever.
Yeah, but that only affects logic. That only affects logical statements. Like if I were,
it's logical.
If I were to say that it logically implies that there are no black swans because all the swans I've ever seen are white, that would be logically that implication you cannot make, right?
You can believe it, though. You can believe it inductively. That's the problem, because that goes the problem with that black swan fallacy is when you're dealing with logic, you're trying to demonstrate the truth of things that are actual, and doing that inductively does not demonstrate the actuality of things.
Yeah, but the thing is that saying that they're like, okay, I can claim that there are no purple swans, right? So
you believe that there are no purple swans because no one has ever demonstrated to you a purple swan.
Right. So so I can make a hypothesis that there are no purple swans, but I would be a fool if I were to tell you that I have now proven that there are no purple swans. I have a hypothesis that's falsified.
Yeah, you have a belief. Yeah, you have a belief that it seems to be the case that there are no purple swans. But here's the thing: what's the importance of that? Hardly anything. It's just, okay, there are swans, and somebody says, well, what do you think, that all swans are white? Well, given what I know of swans, they seem to be white.
But the thing is,
what if I told you they were black swans? Okay, well, show me that there's a black swan.
But the reason he's being an idiot about this, okay, so we have white swans, right? So I'm saying, basically, I'm saying that there are no minds that do not have a brain, a physical nature, and an organism. And he's saying it's black swan fallacy. Well, when you're going from the minds of human beings and you're trying to switch over to something entirely different.
Well, your mistake is to ask him for what examples do you have of minds existing outside of bodies?
Yeah, I did.
And what reasoning are you using to come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I wanted to know what examples he has.
Yeah.
Well, because I would be like, okay, for white swans, you have very good reasons to believe that there could be black swans. But for disembodied minds, we have no reason to believe that.
Yeah, those claims are slightly different. Yeah.
Very different, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what about Rube Goldberg?
It's like saying a swan is still a swan when its brain is the only thing that's left.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Okay.
Sorry. Bad attempt.
What about like a Rube Goldberg machine? It could almost be like we think of a mind in a sense.
Yeah, because when
triggers the next thing.
The funny thing is that with these guys, they conflate the fact that you're giving your reasons for why you believe something to be the case, but that's your belief. Okay. If they're saying it is the case that there is a disembodied mind, and this disembodied mind is ultimate and that which instantiates all that's possible and impossible, it is on them. And they're saying this is actual, this is necessary for all things to exist. That is a huge burden that they've put upon themselves. Now you need to demonstrate it. Okay, well, why don't you believe that? Why don't you believe me when I say that? Because you haven't shown me anything that gives merit to this particular proposition.
Right.
What, you don't think human beings have minds? I know human beings have a thing we have this concept of mind that seems to derive from human beings and human beings having brains, but disembodied minds doing things like this, we don't have any examples of that. So until you give me an example of that, I might be a little bit more inclined to believe this ultimate mind that instantiates all that's possible and possible. But you're not giving me anything to base that. There's no merit to this real claim. And yet, but they want you to, then what they do, all they've done is done a burden shift saying, well, you need to show me how it's true that it is not the fucking case. And I'm like, isn't it more important that it be the case? It not being the case doesn't mean anything unless they think that it not being the case therefore brings on some kind of logical entailment that they can now all go out and start killing people arbitrarily. Right. Because they think without God, you're just going to be this, salivating barbarian that goes out clubbing villagers and dragging their women to cages and shit.
Yeah, some of us are just too tired all the time to go around killing people.
Yeah, we've civilized ourselves since then. It's like, no, that's too much work. Hey, honey, how about some In-N-Out instead of killing the neighbors for food?
Here's the thing that I don't think that Christians quite get with the atheist conversation, right? So we got Redefined Living here is the green guy on the right. And I'm the white. Of course, I'm wearing a white hat on the left. And
how are you doing?
Things started out with Redefined Living attacking me and asking for my proof, right? Of what my proof that what he believes in is not true. But you see, there's a problem with that.
Yeah, they're going at this. My brother and I were talking about this. They're going at this as though that you just walked into a bar, and the minute you walked into a bar, you told everybody, "Hey, everybody, there's no gods."
Right.
And everybody just looked at you and like you were stuck, like, and they'd never heard what gods are before. But instead of you coming in and positing that there's a God, you came in positing that there were no gods. And now all they're left with going is, what the fuck is he talking about? What is a God, and why is he saying there's none of them?
Oh, you're talking about the people who went to the pub with the Paraha people in the Amazon rainforest who don't even have a word for that in their language.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of, but it's you can use that as an example. But either way, it's exactly whenever a concept, if somebody goes, okay, we're going to propose something, we're going to propose X, right? And you have two choices. You can either believe it or you could not believe it. That's actually a false dichotomy, because the first thing that you do is when they propose this particular X to you is ask them what the fuck that is. You can't make you can't come to a position of whether or not you believe it to be the case or you believe it to not be the case without really knowing what they're proposing when they say X is X.
So actually, this is where the null hypothesis fits in, because the default is that we don't believe. And if we don't know what something is, it's fair to assume that we don't believe in it, because one of the prerequisites for believing in something is at least having a partial understanding of what that is that you're believing in.
Yeah. And the other thing that redefined living is actually doing is it does not change the fact that if you say that gods don't exist, or you say, I believe gods to not exist, and he says, well, I believe they do exist, your beliefs don't make that existence of that God, whether it does not exist or whether it does exist, actual. You're just believing in a particular proposition. The proposition God or gods exist could be true on its own. Right? Just like the proposition God or gods do not exist could be true on its own. Your belief in either one of those propositions does not make that actual.
Right, exactly. I agree in that.
They have the direction of evidence backwards, and that's what they want to do. And that's one of the reasons why they keep us caught up in this evolution discussion, right? Because they always keep us on the run, rather than provide their model entirely from the beginning. They're trying to persuade us of something, and yet they want us to provide evidence that there's something is wrong. Which is ass backwards. It's just backwards. You don't do it that way.
Yeah, one of the problems I encounter too is like with people like LPP, John Maddox, is that they'll make these strange assumptions that if you don't accept the proposition, then you must be opposing it. And that's not how the propositions work. The proposition is either you accept it or you don't accept it. True signifies acceptance. False signifies not acceptance.
Yeah,
and the way I try to shake people out of this kind of bifurcated thinking, because they think, oh, there's only two options, and they get all ontological on you. The way to shake them out of this is something I've come up with. I'll say, okay.
Well, the real trick.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, the real trick is to actually take them up on the dichotomy. Because let's say that your reasoning is strictly dichotomy, that you can only believe it to be the case, or you can only believe it to not be the case. It still would not make it actual either way.
Yeah, but that would be limiting the scope of a person's options, which is another problem. But
no, that's why I like to limit it. That's why I like to limit it, because it brings it back to them having to demonstrate not why they believe it's necessary, why they're saying, I believe this to be necessary, which goes more towards a knowledge burden, that now they have to demonstrate the actual veracity of this thing that is now necessary, that they're stating is necessary, not just for it, is necessary for the existence of all things. And go from there.
So yeah, and it's a sleight of hand switching from epistemological to ontological there. And so the way I try to snap people out of the bifurcated approach of saying there's only those two possible options is to say, okay, imagine you've got some children in a playground there playing rock, paper, scissors. There's two kids playing, and they do a round, and one of them wins. All right, so you can propose the proposition you can just describe it as, okay, scissors is the winner. Do you accept that proposition? If they accept it, no problem. If they don't accept it, what's the opposite? Well, there's still two more options. So the dichotomous approach fails here. And so by getting them to think about this, I've had some success with some people actually starting to realize how propositions work.
Well, yeah. And the other thing is that when you're dealing with scissors and the rules of a particular game, you're dealing with the things that actually have a merit. Whereas with the God proposition, they have to clearly define what the God proposition is and demonstrate it.
Oh yeah. So with the God, if you define it and you give some basic properties, and it doesn't have to be a full comprehensive, whole comprehension of it. It can just be a partial description of it. But as long as it's sufficient for someone to be able to understand what it is that they're deciding on.
This is basically saying that it's not dichotomous because instead of people can remain undecided based on you trying to convince them. If they're convincing you and they do a piss poor job of explaining, like if they do a piss poor job explaining the rules of the game, you may be indecisive. You may now be undecided as to what exactly is the objective of how to win that game, or how to play that game.
And one of the most bizarre responses I get to this sometimes, what you just described, where they're saying either you believe for or against, is they'll say, I said, I don't believe. And then they'll say, well, you can't help but not render a judgment on things when your mind encounters things. But now they're disagreeing with Aristotle, one of the most well-respected philosophers in all of history, who said it's the mark of an enlightened mind to be able to consider an idea without accepting it. Well, and the only critique I have of that is I think it's not limited just to enlightened minds. But go ahead.
I chalk it up to the same mentality as what the mentality of is when you read the Bible, when you read the scriptures. Remember that those scriptures are being written as from people who just take the God to exist as kind of like a foregone conclusion, as a brute fact, and that's where these guys are kind of coming from. And so they just think,
damn.
You think that it's, okay, I don't have to demonstrate this. Everybody knows that God to exist. It's a given, right? It's just a given that this God exists. And so when they're writing these narratives, they don't demonstrate that the God exists. They just take it as, oh yeah, it's always been the case that a God exists. Everybody knows that a God to exist. Those guys are coming from that same mentality.
I just want to say I like Speed's comment here. It's hilarious. It's very clever. It's funny how they try to impose and what it's really all about. I figured out, and I'm quite certain this is the case in most cases, is that when people like Dr. William Lane Craig and other people in these debates, and John Maddox and others, they'll start to they feel insecure when they have an interlocutor who doesn't hold a burden of proof because they don't hold a position that requires that brings that about, and yet they're ones making a claim. They don't like this. They want to level the playing field, and the only way that they feel that they can do that is to bring us up to having a burden of proof as well. So they have to impose this burden on us by saying you're taking a claim and pulling those ontological games instead of just dealing with the epistemology properly. Now, there are some theists I've debated with who don't feel insecure about their position and don't care. And those interlocutors are not playing those manipulative games. And that's what we need more of in these debate fields and debate arenas.
Yeah, that's the whole precept trickery, basically, is trying to get you to come up with it. And in a lot of ways, this whole evolution creation thing is the same fucking thing, because they're always trying to get us to offer our stuff, right?
Well, the precept motive is to get you to shut your mouth.
Yeah.
It's to get the atheists to shut their mouths. It's to basically tell them the reason you do this is because of God. You're just denying it.
Yeah. Either be quiet or agree. There's two options. Remember, they always bifurcate.
Yeah.
Oh, well, normally the ones that bifurcate are probably getting Van Til incorrect.
Yeah, that's one I need to look into more.
It's when you start conflating the difference between like Van Til and Bonson, and my brother's more familiar about the differences between Van Til and Bonson. But ideally, the whole idea of proposition is to get people to realize the only reason you know anything, and the only reason we're communicating with one another, and you know what I'm saying, and I know what you're saying, that's all God. And if you deny that, you're just denying the actual existence of God. You just want to be a wicked person, so you're automatically a liar.
Yeah.
The whole thing is like it's interesting when we argue with another person. We're communicating and trying to, in some way, persuade that other person, to change what they believe or what they think or whatever. And we do that all of the time. Like when you call up and say dinner's ready, you're trying to change a person's belief about what is currently going on to dinner's ready, right? So, I mean, I've been reading a book on communication theory and he basically communication in biology by this man named Deleuze. And it's really interesting how he breaks it down to really, really, really simple terms, about one cell communicating with another. And it's very interesting. But the first thing you have to understand when you start arguing with somebody is that you're trying to exchange these sound waves with that person and make some change in them, right? Some permanent change that's going to persist for a while.
Yeah, and that goes on the and then that goes on the objective use of language as well. How we structure, how we understand particular words that we use, how we structure them, understanding those labels for those concepts and properties and attributes and all that other stuff.
Now, what I find is common, like when there's research papers and whatnot, if somebody's using a word that's not commonly used that way, they will normally define it in their research paper that hey, we're using this word this way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if they don't, then you can just assume common usage, and that's I think quite normal. And that's kind of ties back to what you said, Jay, earlier about how people are describing things in reality, and yes, that's where common usage comes in because that addresses reality.
Yeah, we normally address the things that are in front of us, the things that we deal with. When you start trying to it'd be like the burden that they're putting on. In a way, it's kind of like trying to prove that a lion does not exist. Please show me that lions do not exist. Right. And it's like, why would I even bother doing that?
That's
whatever was conceptualized as a lion, you now want me to show you that there are no lions, because somewhere along the line, somebody came up with a concept of lion as being this large cat. We have no examples of this cat, so I see no reason to believe that these lions actually exist. Okay, well, by that logic, you're now stating that it is actual that lions do not exist. No, I'm not. I believe lions do not exist because you haven't convinced me that there are such things as lions that actually exist.
Okay, yeah, and you are holding a belief position when you do that. Now, Top Dog Shada, you made a comment in the private chat here. A person's answer can be pending. I don't know yet. So this is something that comes up in an epistemological question. So if somebody's asking, do you know, you can answer yes or no. If you say you don't know yet, then that's the same as saying you don't know. And all you're doing is you're saying, I don't know, but I may know in the near future. I expect to know in the near future. That's all. But you're still in the I don't know category.
And do you know why? And do you know why no is considered a subset of belief? Because you believe that you know it.
Well,
your attitude towards the proposition is that you not just believe it, you believe that you know it, meaning you can demonstrate it.
Well, yeah, and there's some confusion brought in here by
sometimes that does get that's there's more to it than that, but I figure I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, and then Stupid Whore Energy is is a lactating atheist. Oh, that's funny. That's what but yeah, so there's belief and believing and knowing are actually two different things, and I see them as categories that can be incidental to each other. So I have a friend who is a Catholic, and he was talking with me about this stuff quite a long time ago, because we talked mostly about other things, but this subject of atheism came up this one time. And so he said that for him, he believes God is real, but he doesn't know. So he's an agnostic theist. I don't know for certain whether a God exists or not, and I don't believe, so I'm an agnostic atheist. And it's possible for people to be Gnostic or agnostic, or theist or atheist. Those are two separate categories I see in parallel. And some people are out there saying it doesn't make sense to me, an agnostic atheist and stuff like that, and they have no idea what they're talking about. Those people are just out to lunch, is the way I see it.
Yeah, and somebody
call Ozzy. We're having an epistemic conversation here. We need Ozzy.
Wait, call who?
Ozzy. It just occurred to me at the beginning of the stream that one of the reasons why I'm a hard atheist about this mind concept, right, is because as a teenager, I started to abandon the whole idea of the mind being anything that isn't physical. And I started integrating mind and body when I was a goddamn teenager. So, I mean, it's been with me my entire life. And if they want to come along and if they want to change my belief, they're going to have to do a lot of work.
Well, here's the thing that my brother and I have talked about when it comes to the mind thing, especially when you hear the Darth Dawkins and the J. Robin, and These guys define God as a mind. It's a mind. It's ultimate. It's impossible and it's possible. And one of the things my brother and I were talking about was it's interesting is that mind is the only one of these four things that are given that's not a category.
Yeah.
Ultimate is being loaded there as a category, because once you start asking them to expand upon what they mean by ultimate, they start basically saying that all the omni traits are necessarily entailed by the use of that word ultimate.
You know what I'd like to present to them is an idea that an omnipotent goddess would be slightly more powerful than an omnipotent god, because there's one more thing that she could do that he could not. And that would be to, without modifying herself internally, to become pregnant.
They would probably find that absolutely ridiculous, considering. Yeah, I mean, that would go towards attacking their kind of anthropomorphic idea.
Well, I'm sure they wouldn't like it.
Yeah, they'd probably just dismiss it outright and go, "That's just stupid. If God wanted to have, God doesn't need to get pregnant to make things because He can just make things."
Neither would a goddess. But if God wants to actually get pregnant, He's going to have to.
They would just
change the plumbing.
Yeah, and they would. Yeah, but they'd find it ridiculous. Like they'd find it ridiculous that you would ever think that a God would have reproductive organs.
Yeah, well,
but for some weird reason, they made angels with the ability to get human women pregnant.
I guess that means we're really not made in God's image after all, then.
No, that's just the leftover junk he had left out. Well, they need something. Okay. Wow.
So one more thing I just wanted to address briefly is this idea of taking position that there are no purple swans anywhere and whatnot. Same with deities. We have to be able to. That's a high burden to meet, though. It's actually, I think, higher than. Let's go with deities. So for a theist, their burden is not as high to reach as the anti-theist approach of saying there are none. So if we say if we take that strong position that there are no deities, then the burden we have to satisfy is to prove that it's nowhere in the universe, since the deity could be anywhere in the universe is part of the concept. Whereas a theist, all they have to do is get that deity to appear in front of us, and that'll be sufficient. We don't have to explore the whole universe for that.
Well, they have to show us, like, what they believe about this God is that this God intervenes on the physical. They have to show us somewhere where it intervenes.
Yep.
That's all they got to show us. I
the
mean,
resurrection is enough.
I'm a believer.
And the Shroud of Turin should be called the Sham of Turin.
Did you hear when Maddox went after you, Randolph, about your I would believe if you let me be omnipotent and omniscient for 2 weeks?
Yeah, it was funny. And there's a lady, I forgot her, Thomason. She
SJ.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry, what was it again?
S.J. Thomason.
Yeah, S.J. Thomason, she made a quick video clip about it as well, and she's
Really?
laughing about it. And I even got on her stream and talked with her about it, and it was just hilarious.
Did you get anywhere with her? I mean, it's like
A little bit. I think I got a little bit, and she understood what I was getting at. Because what they were saying is they think that, like, right away they say, "Oh, so you want to be God?" I said, "Well,
no.
God has more than 2 omni characteristics. I'm only asking for 2 of them, so I would not qualify as God, since I wouldn't have the omni chronological characteristic or the omni benevolent characteristic, and so and so."
Yeah, I mean, you were being greedy if you were asking for 2 weeks. I mean, wouldn't 5 minutes do it?
Yeah, that's one of the things that came up a lot from people is, oh, they're trying to negotiate the amount of time. I'm thinking,
yeah,
what's the angle you're going with?
Exactly.
My trick is to just accept it. Just accept the belief. Because I've seen them. I've been seeing them do this with people. Where Tone Loc was having a conversation with Danny. When he was having a conversation with Danny was talking about. He said, "Well, when it comes to this God, I'm the atheist. When it comes to these watered down ones, I'd be, we'd have to flush those out. I would be probably more agnostic on those particular concepts. We'd have to flush those out."
As I say, he's crossing the streams. You remember in Ghostbusters, they warned everybody, don't cross the streams.
Well,
cross the streams anyway, and look at all the destruction that came about.
Yeah, but here's the funny thing is that Tone Loc turned around and said, "I'm not talking about what you know. I'm talking about what you believe."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, no, that's what was disingenuous, because the thing is that Tone Loc is automatically going off of Hebrews 1, where it says that all men know God and they just deny God. And when they say deny, they're not using that as the way that they're using it isn't just simply you saying, no, it doesn't exist. It's denial. Like if you had a broken bone and somebody goes, holy shit, dude, you've got a broken bone and it's actually coming through the skin, and you look at it and go, nah, it ain't broken. That's the kind of denial that they're talking about. It's where something is obviously true, but you're just saying no to it anyway.
Yeah, I think that
the denial they think that you have.
That type of denial would be called delusion. And just for people in the audience who might not be familiar with the metaphor I just used with crossing the streams, I'm saying one of the stream is the knowledge stream and the other stream is the belief stream. So you've got agnostic and Gnostic on one stream and theism and atheism on the other stream. Yeah, don't cross those streams. They're separate.
Yeah.
They're separate.
Yeah.
It's just there's too many people out there that are trying to, armchair philosophers out there who are trying to cross these streams, and they depend pretty heavily very often on the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's opinion piece article on atheism and agnosticism, which was actually written for philosophy of religion. It says so, kind of alludes to that right in the article. And I was in an email chain with Dr. Paul Draper quite a few, just a number of months ago. It was last year sometime. Some people included me in it. And then this question was raised. Was this article meant for philosophy of religion? And his answer was yes.
Yeah.
I get a kick out of the one from the SEP that they like to hammer on.
Yeah.
In branches of philosophy, when you're looking at propositions, you're looking at those propositions as if almost in that sense, almost in an ontological sense. Yeah. And then it gets into the mental states of people where you believe something to be the case because because belief is normally defined philosophically as an attitude towards a given proposition. Yeah. Right. Your attitudes don't make things so. But you can now look at this proposition.
That's general philosophy, and that I agree with too, and that I'm sure lots of philosophers would. Now, this the Stanford article we're talking about even states that there isn't consensus among philosophers on this, and so they're making a.
You mean on atheism? The definition of atheism? Yeah, because they normally hold to it being polysemous.
Well, but the thing is, the point I'm trying to get to is that they're saying that they acknowledge that there's common usage, and they acknowledge it's not consistent with what they're recommending, and they're stating that there isn't consensus in philosophy, so that's a problem too. So when people come along and say, in philosophy, atheism is a position that exactly. Nonsense. What they are doing is they are saying it incorrectly. They should be saying, in philosophy of religion at Stanford University. That's the scope that they should be specifying, and that's where they're going wrong, because there's other universities that don't define it that way.
What they miss from having the conversation with someone is the fact that regardless of however you want to get into the academics of however these words are defined, right? I don't want to be an atheist just so I can be an atheist. I believe when it comes to God or God's existing, I believe them to not exist. Now, if you say by believing God or God's to not exist makes me an atheist, great. That makes me an atheist, right? But if you try to pin me and say, well, can you academically, should you actually believe that? If you really look at almost like they're trying to get me out of the position of being an atheist because it's not quite comporting with your attitude. All right, then we'll just forget that.
That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to convert you. Yeah.
I love that. I love it when they try to convert. I wish more of them would, because it would be hilarious. But none of them do.
I never answered.
They know better.
Okay, I started this whole shitstorm here with Grandpa Geologist, who is David McQueen. All I said was it's always the ultimate with you guys. I think that is a tell. Right. And the ultimate confirmation of separate ancestry by Rob Matt. And it started this whole thing. And that's where Redefined Living came with this. Because you named your channel as you did, perhaps you can answer a simple question. How is it that God is false? I'm like, wait a minute. What the fuck does that like out of the blue, right? And we were talking about, and then David McQueen talks to me a bit about geology here, and
Loaded question.
Yeah, and there's a couple of guys here that really hand him his butt, but well, David McQueen keeps telling me, okay, this is a little bit of a.
Oh, well, I gotta step away for a moment, but I wanted to tell you something, Speed. If you do have a conversation with Redefined Living, it's only a one-way conversation. He will ask you questions. If you try follow-up questions, he will ignore them.
Really? Oh shit!
Yes,
well,
he's really, especially if he thinks that you're asking him a question that's going to trap him. He will immediately just change the topic, or he will just repeat the question. And if you can't, he'll kick you until you have an answer for him.
So he's kind of like Garth Dawkins in that he wants to conduct an interrogation.
It's with them, it's always, Jay Robin, Redefined Living, Tone Loc, and especially Darth Dawkins. It's an interrogation. It's not a conversation.
Definitely.
Right,
where did this notion of God is false come from? Like, how many atheists do you know that use the phrase "God is false"?
I know. I don't know what the hell he's even like.
Yeah. So
is he calling God a proposition, or what he meant is, how do you find the proposition of a God exists being false? And he should have spelled it out. And that tells you right away that he doesn't know the first fucking thing about a logical argument.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get anywhere with him.
I guess my answer would be I don't say that God is false.
I just answered with this. Disembodied minds are impossible. And that is my claim, that disembodied minds are impossible.
It seems to be the case that they're impossible. Yeah, I can go that far with you.
Yep. And then we went on with Grandpa Geologist. Okay, Grandpa Geologist, or David McQueen, I'm pretty sure that's who this is. I'm positive it is. He referenced some videos where he explained to me how the rock layers end up being, they have different radiometric dates as you go down, and how they all, like, all this limestone got deposited. And he referred me to some of his debates on SFT's channel, or his talks. And when I went there and listened to him, he said the dumbest things. I mean, just, he didn't answer.
Why did he refer you to all the papers that he's written on geology?
I know. He didn't answer the question, and he refused to answer it in chat. So I kind of gave up on him. But, I suggested that maybe we should have a talk at some point, but I think it would be painful because he keeps going to these real folksy kind of kindergarten classroom sort of Sunday school talks, right? And he never answers any questions. But anyway, so somebody asked him. Well, anyway, okay. So where's Redefined Living here? Redefined Living comes back at some point with, yes, let's see. Okay, what did he say to me? Okay, yeah, that's the same claim rephrased. I'm asking you how you determine that to be the case. It does not follow that because the minds you are acquainted with exist within a brain, that a mind cannot exist outside of a brain. That is a black swan fallacy. Do you have a line of reasoning? Well, it's not a black swan fallacy, because what I'm thinking is that you have to have reasons to, you have to have some reason or some mechanism to explain a mind without a physicality, right? Without a physical organism. And I can't think of any, but I can think of ways that swans could be black or purple, So it's not, it doesn't fit that. And that's all he threw back at me, and he kept throwing it back at me. And so
he's objecting to what you said, that there's no such thing as a disembodied mind.
Right. And he's sort of implying that I have proven that there are no disembodied minds. And no, we're not at the level of proof, because proof is almost a religious idea. Well, proof is a mathematical idea. And so proof doesn't exist any other place but mathematics.
What I would have done slightly differently if I were in your shoes, I would have said, I'm not convinced that there's such thing as a disembodied mind. And then that leaves it open for them to voluntarily step up and take that burden for themselves.
Which so they don't anyway.
And then they can make their point from there. That's the approach I used.
But I'm a little harder than that. But I have very good reasons to, because I can tell you what I think mind is.
Yeah.
And I have very good reasons to believe that it is entirely tied up with physicality.
And so that's where you got to go now. Yeah.
And And that's fine if he wants to have that conversation, but all he wanted to do is talk about this black swan bullshit. Like, I never said I have absolute proof that disembodied minds don't exist. I do not.
Yeah, so he's doing what a lot of novice debaters do, which is to just identify the fallacy and criticize their interlocutor for it, instead of addressing the matter and just without all that fallacy identification stuff. It's what he should have done. So he's kind of wasting time here.
Yeah, then he says in neuroscience, it is well established that the debate, even among seculars, is inconclusive. Well, it's inconclusive because people don't know a lot about how we think about what mind is, and they just accept it as a given. I have a mind. I'm conscious. You can't deny that. It's called the given. Okay, in philosophy of the mind, they call it the given. That the one thing you know absolutely for sure is that you are conscious, and I deny that. Okay. But yeah, there's a lot of people in philosophy of the mind and in science and even in neuroscience where they're still not sure. And I don't know what the fuck is wrong with them. I want to hit them upside the head.
There's something, I think I heard it on this channel a while ago. I know I'm not dead. That's a pretty good criteria.
What's that?
I know I'm not dead. That's a pretty good. I think I heard that on the channel.
Yeah, I know I'm not dead. I know I have a cup here. I know there's an iPad in front of me. I know a lot of things.
I know I'm not dead. I know I'm
parts of us are dead.
But saying that
there's some echo in here. Do I sound echoing?
High speed.
But saying
for a while.
But saying I know I'm not dead, I think is pretty well sufficient for demonstrating that we can process thoughts and
whatnot.
Right
now, are you guys still echoing? Try it now.
A little bit.
Okay, I'm leaving.
Oh no, don't leave.
Yeah, he gets awfully mad when people echo. Now he's kicking the cats around, throwing dishes everywhere. He just doesn't like it when we echo.
He's going to send something to the raccoons. I'm not hearing myself echo now, so that's good.
Yeah, it's something to do with StreamYard and OBS. They're not playing well together with the audio on the Mac. And when I play a video, if I play part of a video, then at some point it'll start echoing. The echo correction or echo cancellation goes to hell. So I just have to leave and come back, and it resets itself.
I have a separate machine for the OBS stuff I do when I like streaming yesterday. The one I did, we did another 7 hours. It was crazy. We meant for 4, but try the echo off command. Great help.
Echo off. Yeah.
So that I find works better. But at the beginning of the stream, I had a problem. I accidentally left a tab open that had the video on it, and once the video starts, then you can mute it, and I totally forgot I had that tab there, so it started sounding like we're at a big conference with a lot of people talking. Then I had to shut that off.
By the way, Sean Mock, I just noticed that there was a comment that you made that I don't think I replied to you in the stream I'm showing, and I will try to reply to that comment.
That's a great question. This stream is an echo chamber. Yeah, it was for a moment there. Yeah. literally an echo chamber, which is pretty good. But anyway, I just thought that this was a little frustrating. But there was a guy that came in here, Sam Burns, and he starts asking Grandpa Geologist some very, very probing questions, and Grandpa Geologist fails to respond, other than to and he tells him, I used to work in a lab with the guy that found the radioactive halos, right? David McQueen worked in a lab with him. I forget what his name was, Greer or something like that. But anyway, it goes back and forth for a while, and it's hilarious. It's all hilarious. Yeah, welcome to my world. I get into these conversations, I'll call them, with people from time to time. The last couple of weeks, there's some woman was starting to swoon over me and tell me I'm handsome. She likes the way I tilt my head, my blonde hair, on and on. Like show my wife, she's laughing her head off. I always show her right away when these things come up. And then I told her she wants to buy me a suit and stuff like that and clothes. And I said, no, take the money, donate it to your favorite secular charity, and don't send anything to me, thanks. And then She's been trying to use Steve McRae type tactics and convince me that I'm completely wrong about atheism. And it's been going. I blocked her, and she's got an alt account that's probably going to get blocked soon. It's
okay. So Kafai here says, have you ever heard an atheist articulate what constitutes evidence for God within a theological content? Have you ever heard an atheist articulate what? So what constitutes evidence for God? Is that what you're asking, Kafai?
Yeah, he's not asking what constitutes God. He's asking what constitutes evidence for God.
Evidence
within a theological context. Why would
I don't know about
need to provide something in a theological context?
Yeah, why would you need that?
Wouldn't that
kind of assumes God?
See, if it's in a theological context, wouldn't that be faith?
Yeah. Evidence for God in the context of a human being who doesn't read science and doesn't really give a shit about philosophy and doesn't give a shit about anything. Evidence for his belief in God would be that internal subjective experience of, feeling holy and feeling, having faith, that sort of thing. And there isn't a damn thing wrong with that. A lot of people live that way. Like Zen Buddhists will tell you, shut the fuck up and go chop wood. That's basically the answer. Quit thinking, quit asking questions, just live, There's nothing wrong with that. But okay, so what would constitute evidence without a theological context? Because obviously we don't have a fucking theological context. So I'm going to need something outside of that, right? Evidence for me would be like, I guess if I had an experience that was eidetic and I didn't get the feeling like there was something wrong with my mind, where Jesus or God came and talked to me and we had a conversation, a back and forth that made sense. And then I had the feeling of being healthy, mentally healthy during that conversation, where I could not deny that I actually heard this talking person, right? That would really take me a long way to evidence for God. I mean, if he intervened in my mind, my life in such a way that in the same way that my son intervenes when he yells down and says, you want to go for a walk, right? If it was that same eidetic experience, that would go a long way with me, but I would still see a fucking doctor. I don't know. So what else? So if, I guess if God moved something, did something, if my coffee cup disappeared from where it is in front of me right now and appeared on the other side of the room, then I'm going to fucking church.
Or you could check your mind, or like you could have a stroke or something.
The thing is, I've had hallucinations, like real hallucinations, and they are not eidetic. They are different, and you feel very sick when you have them. You feel like somebody shoved a fucking steel rod sword through your mind. You feel very put off and upset. And I have never had that when I'm healthy. So I would have to be healthy and have that feeling of good mental health. And I'm looking at my cup right now. It's not disappearing. If it disappeared, I would tell you guys, and that would be something for me. It's like, why the fuck can't God just do that one little thing for me?
Couldn't people pull pranks on you too? And
not like that. There's no way you're going to get this cup off my desk without it prank me. There's no way a magician is going to fast finger that cup and get it out of there. So, no, there's
just saying something like that. I'm just saying that people's perception of stuff, and that they look away for 1 second and things change.
Well, yeah, you can do that. That, and in fact, that happens all the time. I mean, those are common experiences, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a solid eidetic. Something disappeared while you're looking at it, thinking about it, you're conscious of it. And it disappears, and then it goes somewhere else, and you see it over there. And if that happened,
It never happened.
I've never
seen it, has it?
I don't think it's ever happened to anybody. So
I mean, it's never caught on camera or anything.
What the fuck? Where'd Scott go? What'd Scott say? I need to head out. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's on camera wouldn't do it. There's all, especially today, right? I mean, you've watched DC comic movies, right? That shit ain't real. So I don't know, Randolph. what would change you other than being omniscient?
Well, omniscient and omnipotent, I'd want the two together because omnipotence by itself could be potentially very dangerous and destructive. But with the omniscience, then I would know how to use that omnipotence responsibly and not create problems. But so I see them needing, even though it's a paradox, it would be important to have them both together, right? So as long as you don't take the paradoxical act, things should probably be okay. No new rifts will form in the universe or whatever happens when a paradox occurs. But the paradox I'm referring to is with omniscience and omnipotence is if a being has both of these capabilities at the very least, they can know through their omniscience that tomorrow I will have sunny weather here. But then tomorrow rolls along and they could be able to use their omnipotence to change the weather to snow or rain for the whole day before the day starts. And then therefore invalidating their omniscience from the day before, and therein lies the paradox. So, but there's perhaps other things that could convince me. I haven't really put much thought into it because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what it would require to prove to me that a God exists. But I suppose other ways of interacting with this deity and being able to verify it somehow.
I think encountering
it's not a delusion.
Encountering a ghost that stayed put and actually did some shit like they do in some movies, I think that might do it for me. It wouldn't make me a Christian, but it would put me in some basically I would change my naturalistic worldview entirely.
Yeah, and I noticed you did not ask about worship, which is something that I find a lot of Christians will ask, would you be willing to worship this God as well?
That's the other thing, yeah. I'm not sure.
I consider that to be a separate matter that's kind of incidental to this.
I would also say that once the God is demonstrated to you, there would be no reason to even classify it as supernatural. Just be that which is necessary for all natural.
Right.
Whatever natural, because natural and supernatural are so poorly defined sometimes. It's, the way we use natural, like all natural food, it doesn't, isn't necessarily the same as like, is a steel fence natural? Philosophically, yeah, it's part of nature. We make steel fences.
By the way, I would still believe in evolution and abiogenesis, even if I believed in such a God.
Yeah, because there's nothing saying that a deity couldn't do things that way.
Right.
Speed, would you say it's more accurate to say you would still accept it as a fact?
I'd accept that as a fact, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't...
Fact is also... I don't like the word fact too much. Okay, unless you're applying it to this coffee cup in front of me that I'm looking at. That's a fact. Okay, it's a fact.
I think you're just basically saying that a fact is a fact. A fact is normally used in place of like a claim or a proposition that refers to something that is actual.
Yeah. Evolution is a complicated thing, and calling it a fact really, really leaves out a lot of the complexity. So I don't care.
Facts about evolution.
It's a theory, which is an understanding of how the facts work together, is it not?
Yeah, it's basically it'd be like, okay, if I if I want to figure out how my car got in the garage, right? I would use a lot of information that I have about how my car got in the garage, knowledge that I have about it, right? And that's what I do with evolution. And would I call it a fact that I drove my car in the garage? Well, yeah, I guess so. But I'm not sure. Somebody else might have robbed the fucker and brought it back. But
you do know that based on your examples of reality, the car didn't, dematerialize and then rematerialize inside of your. Right.
Pretty fucking sure that's not.
Don't try to do a Sherlock Holmes and say that when all answers have failed, whatever remains, however impossible, is likely the case.
Yeah,
that's just bad.
Yeah, the whole thing. Like I look at belief and knowledge and all of these things from a neuro aspect too. Also, so a belief is a disposition for you to act or behave in a certain way, given a certain set of circumstances. That's all a belief is. Like if you And if those circumstances happen to be somebody else communicating a concept to me, then all of that hashes out physically, right? And I will have a disposition to make noises back at you, along the lines of what I believe. But if I believe something, I have a disposition to believe it. I believe it's warm outside. I have a disposition to not wear a jacket when I go out there. So, yeah.
So is it understanding a belief?
An understanding is a little different. An understanding is it's more of an emotional thing when you have a number of facts that you're learning about something, and all of a sudden they all kind of come together, and now all of a sudden you have an intuitive grasp of that concept, and you can use that concept for further things. You get this feeling that I have an understanding. I'm going through that with biology right now, basically. There are certain areas.
I mean, you can have an understanding. Yeah, having an understanding of the use of sophistry and rhetoric is not necessarily having a good grasp necessarily on facts, but you do understand how sophistry works.
Yeah.
Just like you can be, you understand you understand the rules of deception or how to be deceptive in a particular way in order to get what you want. That's a good understanding of things. You can understand lots of concepts and lots of things that are presented to you, but still be not convinced of them.
But I want to
have no attitude towards it.
You can understand TV shows and movies, and doesn't mean they have to be what it is in real life.
But I want to make a further point here about understanding. When you come to an understanding of something, there is a feeling involved that we humans get. It's part of how our brain operates.
You can't bring feelings noise into the equation, Speed. Come on, haven't you learned anything from
feeling into it, man? I'm bringing that hippy dippy feeling stuff.
Don't bring the feelings noise in. Because, man, I got on praise for doing that. He went on. He appealed to feelings noise in one of his freaking comments to me, and I said, look who's bringing in feelings noise."
Well, I'm bringing it. In this respect, you know what I mean, right? When you're trying to understand something, and all of a sudden you lock in and you understand it, there's a feeling involved in that, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Feelings sometimes inform beliefs. Sometimes beliefs inform feelings.
And sometimes feelings are just what drive belief without reason at all, unfortunately. So
it's using the emotions too far is where it's bad, but you need to have a little bit to have a better society of.
I'm gonna have to go pretty soon, but Beamsy has something to say about Cafe's view on something, a position on something. I'd like to try to hear a little bit of that before I head off.
Okay.
You mean what Caffey's been talking about? The interesting aspect of what he's trying to say is you need to understand theology to criticize theology. Not necessarily.
You can go if somebody's presenting you, if you've never been presented with anything remotely the case in theology, but the person is presenting theological claims towards you, and they're as they're presenting them, you're asking questions to get better understanding, and you're understanding as you go along. And you can critique those. You can also critique that person's claims as you go along, ask questions and stuff like that. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to know all there is to know about theology or have a good grasp of theology to really criticize it. You can criticize that as it's being presented to you.
Do you know? We criticize the arguments.
Beamsy, do you know Kafai?
No, I saw what they were actually saying in chat, and I was basically going, "No, you don't need to know theology. It's a matter of we criticize the arguments and what is presented, not the theology itself." So
okay, did he write denying the theology?
It's not a matter of denying the theology. Where was it again?
I think what's going on is they're expecting that everyone's going to accept the theology as foundational for their arguments. So the arguments aren't standing on their own merits. They are dependent on the theology as well. And theology is a big murky swamp. How do you reach in there and pull out what you need? Yeah. There's different things that they can do. So I think what you need to do is press them to be more specific and clarify the points without having to delve into the theology.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would, in a way, I can kind of see, okay, based on reading it, it's necessary to have an understanding of the theology you're attempting to criticize. you can build that understanding as you go along with somebody talking about the theology. So in a way, I don't necessarily entirely disagree with the statement. I just think, the statement just seems a little simplistic. So either way, it's like,
okay, Kafai is a person that has had some experience on psychedelics where he has found God. Basically, he has basically touched God with psychedelics, and he's also tied up in panentheism, and he believes Spinoza and Einstein were panentheists rather than pantheists, rather than saying the universe is God. And he's got this whole spiel. But the thing is, Kafai has had a religious experience, or a pseudo-religious experience on drugs. And from that, he has this belief and this understanding. And because he turned it into a belief, he missed the fucking point of the experience. A spiritual experience or a religious experience is where you basically, something happens to you as a human being. And if you follow that up by starting to believe in something, to believe in like a deity or something like that, that is the opposite of the experience that you just had, and you will fuck the experience up. And I've been trying to tell this young man for a long time that that's not how you do it. Anyway.
But the aspect of you don't need to know the entirety of a presented point to actually criticize what is being presented. In the same way that I don't fully understand the aspect of rape, but I will criticize that.
That's a comparison they'll probably like. And by the way, hello, Cafe. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Cafe in various streams and the live chats. It's always a pleasure to chat with.
He doesn't know how to pronounce it himself, so if you ask him, he'll tell you. He doesn't care. So
my best effort is Cafe. So I hope that's acceptable.
He is he is a very old friend of mine now. Because I basically run into him before the YouTube experience. So anyway.
But you can see by the analogy that I made that just because I don't fully understand something doesn't mean I can't criticize the points that could be put forward by it.
Yeah.
There's this one here that he wrote. He says you can't have a complete lack of knowledge of theology. Yeah, I would argue that if you have a complete lack of knowledge of theology, meaning you're not familiar with theology at all, that the whole idea of theology is completely outside of anything you're familiar with, you wouldn't criticize it at all because you don't know what it is at all.
And Cafe's point right now is right on the mark, I think. Not having to have 100%. He's saying that he's never said that, and that's fair. Yeah. And this is like what I said, like the prerequisite for believing in something. You don't have to have 100% understanding of it. What I mentioned earlier is consistent with that. You just have to have a basic idea. So
the thing that kills me about him is that he's basically a Buddhist, and he's coming at it from this really, really global concept of God. And yet he sides all the time with Christians against atheists. He's like John Maddox in that he has a problem with atheists, right? And that's the point of contention between me and him. He and I experience the same brand of God, which is, this feeling that this religious experience, right? That sort of thing. But we'll argue all day long about this theist thing. And then I find him on theist sites citing, yeah, you're a fucking Buddhist. You just don't know what you are. Go smoke another joint. Drop another.
I've not had so I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
When it comes down to me, the closest I ever get to God is when the girl's screaming, "Oh God, I'm coming."
Yeah, that's where that came from. He cometh, or that's sort of, and he has risen. I think that's where that came from too, right? He has risen.
He has risen.
That's what your mom said. Anyway. Yeah.
But when it comes down to what he states about the 100% understanding and don't need it, if you have absolutely no understanding of it, then it then comes from one of two ways. You can either be honest and actually either ask questions about it or say, I don't know. Or you can be dishonest and still criticize it and then come off looking like an ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see Christians do that with evolution. Sorry. Oh, shit. Did I just say that?
Yeah, I had something caught in my throat as well.
Oh shit. Anyway. Oh,
I mean,
hell.
how much of these guys actually really understand the theory of evolution while they criticize it because they don't want the theory of evolution to be true because it conflicts with their creationist views?
Oh my God. I heard, who the hell is it? That bubble person on John Maddox's site. He said, you know, if mutation is how evolution happens, then how come there aren't a lot of dead mutant fish laying around in the pond? And I mean, it's like, okay, you know, I can see how somebody might be confused by that, but it's obvious that they don't know jack shit about evolution or biology or, you know, how any of this stuff works, and they're so confident. It just kills me to hear them.
It is kind of ridiculous. It is ridiculous, isn't it? It's like, if you didn't, they do realize, like, in order to get Welsh Corgis is about selecting for a particular mutation. In this particular case, when it comes to Corgis, one of the dominant mutations that they're selecting for is the dwarfism.
Yeah,
because they're they're not a toy breed. They're a true dwarf, and in order to, when they created that particular breed of dog, they actually selected for dogs that had dwarfism to make that dominant. That's a mutation, and there's not a bunch of dead ones lying around, except for the ones that die of old age or get hit by cars.
Well, is there another word for neutral and positive mutations? So we don't have mutation in the word?
Benign.
She's on your left.
I'm not sure. But anyway, so most mutations are neutral. They have no effect on the phenotype, right?
Most of them are benign would be the better way of putting it.
I wouldn't call them benign. I'd call them neutral, because what we have is, we have negative mutations, which are selected by purification. Basically, you wouldn't find dead fish in the pond because they never would have made it out of the mother. They would have never made it past minnow stage, right? So there are not going to be a lot of mutant fish laying around in the pond. And then you've got neutral in the middle, and then you have plus on top. And there are a few positive mutations that might happen just right out of the box, like ApoA1 Milano, that thing that gives people cholesterol superpowers in that small town in Italy, and allows them to live at 100 with super high cholesterol content in their blood. You'll find some things like that, but most things are going to be in this neutral category. And what you're going to find is a very slow change. Like if you got a, God, can I draw a fish? I can't draw a fish for shit, man. Is that a fish? Anyway, okay, you got a fish, and he's got like a fin, right?
That's not a fish. That's not a fish.
I know it's not a fish. I'm sorry. I'll get rid of that fucking fish.
It looks like the freaking crab goop from freaking Cowboy Bebop.
I'm sorry, I can't draw shit. Okay, so we have a limb or a fin, right? So this is a fin on a fish. Now there are some genes are going to affect the shape of that fin, right? Just quit fucking with me, Jay. God damn it. I said I can't draw. Okay.
Somebody's put their foot through something.
Yeah. Anyway, there are some little bones. Basically, there's some little bones in here that allow that fin to move, right? And these little bones, okay, you might experience one mutation. Most mutations are going to be neutral, and the ones that aren't neutral are not going to affect things like the fin, right? Very few things affect that fin. So anyway, but occasionally you'll have a mutation that makes this particular bone a little bit longer, or maybe it will make a little bump on that bone, or maybe the muscle will attach differently to that bone, right? To the fish. You'll end up with these very tiny mutations, and over time you're going to end up with this, this pattern of two bones and a wrist and basically some fingers, sticking out, that sort of thing. But that takes a series of pathways that will happen over a period of anywhere from, I'm guessing, 10,000 to 1 million years, right? Or millions of years for this to go to that. And so you're not going to, and the thing is that at any point, if something goes wrong with one of these limbs in the fish to where it cannot swim anymore, the fucking thing is going to die. and it's going to die as a minnow, and you're not going to find lots of mutant bodies laying around because there aren't that many mutations that make it out of the womb that are viable. So anyway, that's why it doesn't make any sense, and it's laughable to think about it. But anyway, for neutral and purifying selection and positive selection would be something that actually increases the reproductivity of an organism and gives it a better chance of spreading in a population. But this thing is the thing that's going to be the most common, the neutral mutations. But the thing about neutral mutations is they end up doing things and forming pathways, and they don't really go anywhere. But at some point, one will go bingo, and all of a sudden it's doing something that's important.
Which is why benign is the better word to use.
Benign? Well, okay, I'm into evolutionary biology, and we would never use that word, so I'm sorry.
That's the word I actually hear more than neutral within
really
biology.
benign. Oh, okay. Well, maybe you do.
I've only done general biology. I haven't actually really gone far into genetics, so I may be wrong when it refers to genetics. But every time I hear about that aspect, it's always benign or positive or detrimental.
Yeah, you've got a curve here, basically. And you've got like
the old bell curve.
These are positive mutations. These are negative mutations. Well, maybe we draw the line right there. So there's more negative mutations, and so there's quite a few things that can actually kill the organism. But most things are going to appear right here in this neutral area, and the genome is going to start to change, and it's going to end up having a future function, that sort of thing. But the reason why you don't worry about this shit over here, this negative mutations, and the reason it isn't a problem, this stuff over here isn't a problem, because like for human beings, when a sperm hits an egg inside of a woman, okay, there's very few pregnancies, about half of those pregnancies terminate before they even get started because of negative mutations. So negative mutations are cleaned out of our genome constantly, and then of course anywhere from there's a lot of miscarriages, and miscarriages are because of some mutation that was deleterious, and then there are a lot of birth defects where the child never makes it into the reproductive stage. So I mean, the purifying selection cleans out that bad shit. And we're left with the neutral stuff and the few positive things that manage to come together, and that's how it happens. So, anyway, I got to shoot it in the head, guys. So, Beamsy, thanks for showing up.
I was sitting in the channel for a bit. I just wasn't really paying much attention until I saw that question. It was basically,
Yeah. Kafai is he and I go back. Yeah, he is from Texas. I think maybe that's part of his problem, but
no, it's he's trying to actually represent that the only thing that we try and criticize is fundamentalists, but I don't criticize the religion itself. I criticize bad arguments that are put forwards. That way I can stay within the topic, is the better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like I don't criticize old Earth creationists because they at least accept a high degree of the scientific method.
Right.
Whereas in a young Earth creationists, they're open game.
Yeah.
But the aspects in which they share with an old Earth creationist, I won't really criticize because it's not relevant.
Yeah, there's a kind of Christianity, like when me and my friend Mac, we were, I don't know, like 15, 16 years old, and we had started, into the Buddhism thing. And we decided to become Catholics on purpose one summer, and we decided to believe in it on purpose. So we basically did whatever restructuring we had in our brains in order to actually be as if we believed in it, right? And we had this amazing summer, and at the end of the summer, we said, okay, that's it. That's enough. We're going to, back off. And we just discarded the belief. But we found some very important things out about how you can adopt a religion. You could be a religious person, and you could accept Christianity at some level without ever questioning the details of it, right? I mean, we didn't sit there and force ourselves to believe that, some Jesus dude had risen. We didn't do that. We just used all the other emotional aspects of religion. And we had a summer that was absolutely wonderful. I mean, it was like very, very, you would call it spiritual, right? Because we really immersed ourselves in Catholicism, and it was very interesting. And that exercise taught me a lot about how I could accept a Christian, as long as they're not out there spouting bullshit. I don't know.
People go to conventions like and stuff, so they sometimes have fun with their fictional stuff, as long as they know it's fiction.
Yeah, exactly. Just like going to Comic-Con or whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Within me, I'm a Celt, so therefore I'm a pagan. I'm not truly an atheist because I fall within the theistic aspect of it. But that's another long-winded argument.
You probably get what I'm saying if you're a pagan, because I think that stuff draws on that spiritual, emotional aspect of it, right?
It's more the spiritualistic and the emotional aspect, but the aspect of the god doesn't come into it because within Celts there's no overbearing god. That's where the big difference is.
So, are you familiar with Carlos Castaneda?
I've heard the name, but I don't know from where. Sorry.
Okay, he was kind of a fraud. He wrote these books about spiritualism and this kind of these Indians in South America, and they did peyote and all that stuff. But it turned out that he was found to be more of a fraud. But still, he wrote these things. But back in the 60s, he had us going out in the woods, and he told us, that you go out in the woods and you fuzz your mind or open it up in a fuzzy sort of way, and you look for paths, and you start following these paths. And when you follow these paths, things will happen to you. Like one of my friends, he noticed that there were birds, right? And then all of a sudden, he had all these experiences with birds, until it scared him so much that he refused to ever do it again, because a bird crashed into his window, crashed into his car. He had birds drop dead at his feet. I mean, he just opened himself up to following this path. And it's an amazing thing about the universe and our minds and how we interact with the universe, that if you open yourself up to the spiritual nature and you start following a path, you will find all of this synchronicity. And for me, my thing is being in the woods. And I spent a lot of time in the woods, totally ripped on LSD, right? So I had this intimate nature with every rock and tree, and it affected me powerfully, and I could feel that effect. And that I'm okay with. If you want to live your life like that, that's okay. And there is some sort of power in the synchronicity about how minds interact with the universe. And it's very deep, and you can go in a lot of ways with it. But as long as you stay the hell out of making statements about science, it's just, you're okay.
Yeah, and I think I'm starting to see where Kafai comes from. It's a matter of he conflates theology as philosophy and doesn't see them as two separate doctorates. That's where I think our conundrum comes from. But
okay. Anyway, we're over time, so I gotta shoot this thing in the head, Beamsy.
Oh my! Not the face.
Huh?
Don't worry. I was just being dirty again.
Oh, okay. Oh, did you say not the face?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay. What a great way to
Stay curious.
Great way to end this thing. Okay. Goodbye, cruel world.
Das war Daniel.